Okay, let's go.
It's time for Be Picked. When you're ready to move from clicks to clients, learn to be picked.
Do you ever think about using your brain to sell your practice? Well, that can mean a whole lot of things. And today we're going to talk about one particular meaning of that phrase. This is Be Picked, the podcast for small service professionals, lawyers, solo practitioners, small firms starting their practice and trying to build their practice. I'm your host, Andrew Colsky, and today we're going to be talking with Jesper Sandell, and he is the creator of the neuronarrative method. And Jesper, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks so much for having me.
We are excited to have you here. And I mentioned, obviously, neuronarrative method, so we should probably start right in with that. What does that mean?
Well, it means I want to bring it back to communication right away. If you think about communication, is that we're trying to get somebody else to understand a concept, to take an action. So the neuro in neuronarrative means it starts with how does the brain actually make decisions? Like what are the criteria that it makes a decision? What are the criteria that it pays attention? And how does the action actually works? And how do we speak to the people we're trying to talk to in such a way that they understand it and so that they can actually take action on what we're communicating? So that's kind of what it means.
Okay. All right. So let's break that down into some actionable steps here. So obviously, as a small practitioner or any practitioner, our goal is to get the client, because without the client, nothing else matters. But that's a little bit challenging these days because there's a lot of competition. And from a client's perspective, if they've never met any of the potential people that they're thinking of hiring, how are they going to choose, A versus B? So break that down for us in terms of what types of things can a person specifically look at doing that can help improve their chances of being the one that's picked when a client is searching for help.
So I think I want to start here is a lot of people when they come, let's say that they've been working maybe B2B, they've been in a corporation or they've been part of a law firm, they've been part of another practice, and they're used to speaking to potential clients within the frame of I have a backing frame, like I have a big company behind me. I have the reputation already. So the trust is already in place. They already know what to bring to the table. When you break out free from that, all of a sudden you don't have the reputation. You don't have the big name. All of a sudden it's you and 1,000 other people that promise the same thing. So as a first step, you have to understand that the way we pay attention is not by looking at details. We do not want to take in more information. In fact, we hate information. What we're looking for is really a quick snapshot that can separate you from other people. Because without that snapshot, you're not going to get the time of the day. People are just simply going to ignore you. So, for example, there's a reason why the life coaches, the big name is Tony Robbins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the other ones who are not Tony Robbins, because they have to fight for all the attention, all the scraps that are left over. And you can't really do that by simply giving more information and telling them how you are. You have to start with, how do I get attention? How do I stand out in such a way that they have to pay attention to me, if that makes sense?
Mm-hmm. Right. So, I love the example of Tony Robbins versus all the others, because I'm sure that there are plenty of other life coaches and similar folks out there that are very good at what they do and really helpful for their clients, yet they're not well known. So what is it that Tony Robbins did to become well known, and how does that compare and contrast to Joe Smith, who isn't well known?
So when you start something new, the reason people talk about you have to be niche about something, it's because if you are broad, there's no way you can stand out. But if you're niche enough, you can be very interesting. I like the word remarkable. If you're worth remarking about, that means you're worth taking the time out of your day, actually spending some time thinking about what is this person talking about. So now, um, so I want to bring it back to this. Everything you do, you always need to back up. You need to demonstrate. That's how you create credibility. That's how you create authority. So in order to understand how people actually work, what I like to do is I do a little exercise. If I may, can I take you through a very quick exercise?
Sure.
Because it illustrates how the brain functions, how it works. And if you get this wrong, nothing ever works. So I want you to remember 5 words. I love the food in Paris. Actually, that's 6 words. I love the food in Paris.
Okay.
Easy to remember, right?
Yes.
Do you get any associations with Paris? Um, have you been to Paris? Perhaps you get some images, what it looks like, and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Easy to remember, right?
Right.
Now, I want you to say that exact same phrase to me from memory, but backward.
Boy. So let's see if I can do this. Ferris in food, the love I. Did I get it?
That's I think that's good. Now, how many images did you get in your head when you did that?
Going backwards?
Yes.
The images of me failing and looking foolish, and I really could only focus on the words. I couldn't focus on anything else.
It's so bad. We don't really understand this, but our brains are so limited, and it does things in such a particular order. If I would just say I love Paris, you would probably it's probably much easier to say backwards, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's because we have a very limited working memory. And when we memorize that sentence, we don't realize how much of automations are going on in the background, how English is spoken. Paris is already a concept. We don't have to figure out what it means. So that when people usually try to get attention, what they lead is with the data. Say, for example, you're writing your paragraphs, you're writing a LinkedIn post, is the equivalent of giving people, I love the food in Paris, backwards. People don't want to read it. Their brains simply don't understand it. But if you consider marketing this way, how can I create an image, literally an image, so strong in people's minds that they can't forget me? Like the famous quote by Steve Martin, be so good that people can't ignore you.
Hmm.
So it starts with that. Okay, so not how can I show how I'm better? How can I talk about my services? So like, how can I create an image that is so vastly different from everything else that I've earned their attention, and from there on, I can take it further. So when you think of marketing yourself, you got to start with, okay, so how am I different? How am I remarkable? How can I stand out? And then how can I back it up?
So, all right. I want to put this into practice.
Okay.
So, what would you say, given your knowledge and background, if I came to you and I said, Jesper, I am a bankruptcy attorney, and there's thousands of bankruptcy
Yeah.
attorneys around, right?
Yeah.
And I went to a decent school, not
Yeah.
the best, not the worst.
Yeah.
I got good grades.
Yeah.
I have done well for my clients. I've never had any kind of complaint,
Yeah.
but several hundred other attorneys could say exactly the same thing that I'm saying. So what type of things could I even begin to think about that's going to set me out as being unique?
Well, it depends. I assume bankruptcy lawyers do slightly different types of bankruptcies.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
there might be a niche within that field.
Okay.
Another thing that you can do, this is classic Claude Hopkins. Claude Hopkins is known for I believe it was Schlitz beer, and he went to the factory to understand how they made their beer. And then they showed him it was a very intricate process how they made all the beer, and he was just fascinated. And he said, "Why don't you talk about this in your marketing?" And they said, "Well, this is how everybody makes beer. Everybody gets the water from all the way around. They do it all the filtering. They do it exactly the same thing." And he said, "Yes, but they're not talking about it. The moment you talking about it in such a way that nobody's heard about it, it becomes yours." So it could be that you have a very specific process, for example, that you follow. It could be that you solve a very particular niche in that industry. People are going to be flocking always to a problem. So if you pick out of all those things that you do, it's not so important as it is what is the main problem that I solve in such a different way that nobody can compete with it.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does. So I want to run an idea past you. As you were talking, I had an idea form in my head. So I was thinking to myself, because it's always, like you just said, it's always going back to the feeling. What problem does that person have, and what feeling are they trying to achieve? And I was thinking about a typical bankruptcy client. I don't practice bankruptcy law, but I can imagine.
Mm.
And two things came to mind.
Yep.
Number one was their first concern is, how do I get out of my immediate money problems? Because
Ah,
it's crushing me.
yeah.
But their second question is probably, what happens and what do I do? How do I rebuild? What happens the day after bankruptcy? And the title of a book came into my head, which was The Day After Bankruptcy.
Mm,
So while every other bankruptcy attorney is talking about how we can get you out of this particular problem, I'm
yeah.
talking about, oh yeah, we'll get you out of the problem, but what are you going to do the next day? And I don't think anybody addresses that. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but that's what
Yeah.
came to me.
I think actually that's a really good idea is it starts with the end user. It starts with the person going through this situation. And I'm pretty sure, and I'm not an expert when it comes to bankruptcy, but I'm sure we can find ways to look at it as a failure. Like I failed, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. Maybe I'm not smart enough, or maybe I'm just not cut out for this. But if we bring it back to bankruptcies fail, like you look at some of the best marketers in the world, they had like 5 bankruptcies under their belt until they got it. It's part of the process. So it's not about if whether you got a bankruptcy or not, it's what you learned, because on the next chapter after, this is where I'm going to do some amazing stuff. And you have to go through the bankruptcy first to actually reach this stage. It feels backwards, but once you've gone through that bankruptcy, there's actually a very bright future, and I want to lead you to that. And because it validates who they are, that their problem was actually not something they could have solved, and it's not because they're stupid. It's like, this is just part of life, and actually you're ahead of the curve. You're sitting on a golden opportunity. Let me take you by the hand and show you what's really possible once this has happened.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does. So then where that brings my mind is, okay, so number one, as the attorney in this scenario, um, first the client has to come to me. They have to even know that I exist. Um, and then I need to be able to, once they look me up, or try to find me, or know to come to me, or whatever it is that they're doing,
Yeah.
that's when they'll be able to get my message. And that's where I can start to differentiate myself. But what is it that effective people do to even get the first part? How is a client even going to know that I exist?
That's really marketing. That is the conundrum of marketing, right? If nobody's heard of you, they're not going to come to you unless it's word of mouth, unless it's a referral from a past client. And marketing is limited, right? You can do paid ads, you can do social media. I would argue that YouTube is a little different, but you can do social media, or you have the fire hoses, you have Instagram, you have X, all those other platforms, or LinkedIn. So that's a hard route, and the only way to really get results from those platforms, in my opinion, is to be, again, focus on a very narrow niche that you can master. Be the big fish in the small pond so that you can actually get people onto your platform. And
Hmm.
in my experience, one of the best ways you can do that is to create your own presentation, your own masterclass, your own, because you want to bring them off the platform, you want to bring them off the fire hose so that you have them in an environment where you can influence them to take the next step because you can control the narrative. Right. You
Right.
can't really do that on LinkedIn because people are just scrolling past and you get like two people. If you go too deep, two people are going to click your post. So you have to be broad enough so it captures enough people, but you have to be interesting enough so they want to find out more.
Hmm.
Uh, so if you think about the marketing in terms of the first level is really curiosity. How can you make somebody so curious they can't help wanting to find out more? And in terms of like being very niche at the beginning, you could broaden that later on. But if you become known in the beginning for one problem and you focus on one of, say that there are 10 types of bankruptcies. I don't know if that's true, but say that there are. Then
Hmm.
you become known for one of them and the rest will follow. Because you only need attention in one of them, you get enough clients. The other ones, since they know you're the master in this first one, they will assume that you can do the other ones as well.
Right. Right.
Do you know what I mean? So, because if you try to do 10 things, nobody remembers everything. If you do one thing extremely well, people will remember you for that.
Right. Yeah, and it's, I guess this is kind of the whole thing that I talk to my clients about, which is basically the good thing, one of
Mm,
the good things
yeah.
about the internet and technology that we have is we can find out the common things that people are looking for, what type of problems they have that they're trying to solve because they search for them and all that data is captured and we can look at different places and find out that perhaps perhaps there's a large number of people looking for can I get rid of my student loans in bankruptcy? Maybe that's a big one. So if we, as the professional, choose
Mm,
that as our niche,
yeah.
student loans and bankruptcy,
Yeah.
then there's the opportunity to, like you said, number one, put up posts on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all these things. There's the opportunity to create YouTube videos that
Yep.
give a little bit more information. There's an opportunity to write blogs, write a
Yep.
book, speak at
Yep.
places. And so now what happens is the person with the problem starts to do some searching online, which is typically what they first do. And now you start to show up because you've got the blog out there, you've got the YouTube video, you've got the post, you've got all these things that are happening.
Yep.
And so without you ever meeting that client or knowing that they exist, you've already made yourself credible to them because now they're reading your stuff. And now they're saying, you know what? That guy says and talks about exactly what my problem is. He understands me. He understands my problem. Let me give him a call because why wouldn't I? Why am I going to go call the guy down the street that I know nothing about versus this guy who has already told me that he knows exactly what my problem is and how to solve it. So I guess that's kind of what you're getting at.
It is, and just the mere familiarity with something, if somebody sees your face, hears your voice, hears about you talking about the problem, they may not believe you the first time. The second time, well, didn't he say something similar? The third time, that's how the brain works. It works in familiarities. Things that are familiar, we trust. There, I think it was from Cialdini's book. He was talking about how one of the salespeople had much better conversions than almost everybody else. So he was following this salesman um, as he was doing the sales. He was doing sales in people's houses. He would
Hmm.
always go in to the people's house. They would sit down at the kitchen table. He had the documents, and then he always went, "Ah, shoot, I forgot one of the most important documents." So he stood up and got ready to go outside, and they would say, "Let me take you out. We can let you back in." And he said, "No, no, 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 no. Don't worry. Just sit here, wait. I don't want you to do the trouble. I can let myself in." He went to the car, he got the document, he let himself in. Now, that shouldn't make a big difference. However, who do we let in our house,
People we
right?
trust.
Somebody you trust. And we don't operate on an intellectual level. We always operate on a gut level first. So that everything he says, everything he suggests now is framed from the lens of, oh, this is a person I trust. He has the best interest in my mind because he does the same thing that I do with my husband, with my son, with my friends. They let themselves in. We don't think about it, but that's how we see it, which is why familiarity, when somebody sees you again and again and again, even though they may have a tenth of your skills, but it doesn't matter because we don't understand the skills on a high level. We just understand it at a gut level.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing is that clients are hiring you. They're not hiring your skills. Now they are hiring your skills, but in
Yeah.
order to get to your skills, they got to hire you.
Yeah.
So if you're not likable, if you don't come across confident, if they don't feel that you understand their situation, they're going to move on to the next person that does. It kind of like is for doctors, it's sort of like bedside manner. Now, if you're in the hospital, it's against your will. You get the doctor that shows up, and they can have a horrible bedside manner, and I've met some who do.
Yeah.
But I don't have a choice. That's the
Yeah.
person going to be treating me. But if I'm on the outside and I'm going to go to a doctor because I want to get a checkup or whatever the issue may be, I'm going to go to someone that I trust, that I feel understands me, that is able to communicate with me in a way that makes me feel like I'm not doing something wrong, like I've been a bad person and that's why I got a cold or something like that.
Yeah. No, it is true. It is true. You can look at some funny statistics about how stocks perform better when they have names that are easy to remember, familiar. You look at politicians, for example. I'm not going to go down that road, but you have politicians. People look at them and they have no idea really what they stand for, what their values are, but their tone of voice and the way they spoke reminded them of an uncle they really liked when they were kids. Hence, I trust this person, even though I know nothing about him, but on a gut level, I trust him. Um, so it is really, really important that we get that trust. Um, so for sure, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the idea here is that there are opportunities and tools that are available to us, but
Hmm.
they're available to everybody. And in order for us to make them effective, like you said, starting off with that small, well-defined niche, something where there are indeed clients. I mean, we're not going to find something that's so tiny that nobody has that problem, but uh, but that's a great way to start off and differentiate ourselves. And it doesn't mean that's the only thing we practice.
Yeah,
It means that's something where we have a lot of knowledge and a lot of interest and practice that.
yeah,
And we may practice other things. So,
yeah.
um, I remember years and years and years ago when I was a kid, I was interested in real estate investing. And I went to the community. The county had this adult education classes that they put on. They're
Okay.
inexpensive. They're a couple classes at night. And it's just to introduce you to a concept. And so I went to a real estate investing class, and it was taught by a local real estate attorney. I'd never heard of this person, didn't know anything about him, whatever. Um, and so I took the class. He had a lot of good information. So, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'll remember that. And I had been already investing in real estate at this point, and I had some tenants. And of course, you run into a landlord tenant problem, and it's like, uh-oh, now what do I do? So, of course, first thing I thought of is, oh, wait a minute. This guy that taught our class, he knew all about this stuff because he talked to us about all this. So who did I hire? Obviously, I hired him. I wasn't going to go out and look for somebody else. I already knew somebody that knew how to do this.
Right. Yeah.
So, just being out there in front of people and, giving enough information to show that you do have the expertise in the area, that's how you start to build credibility.
It's that is really, really true. I thought of something when you were talking, such a good example. One of the best things I think you can do as a anybody who's new is remember at the beginning of the show, I took you through the exercise where I asked you to remember 5 words and then the backwards. If you look at commercials versus infomercials, if you look at the numbers, I don't know the numbers from the top of my head, but infomercials, they outclass commercials by far. They sell way, way, way more. And one of the core concepts, it isn't new. I mentioned Claude Hopkins before. This is how he did back in the 1910s. Is like he said you don't sell people by telling them what they should buy and this is better. You let them try it. They have to sample it. Meaning you have to prove, ideally through some sort of a presentation where they get to experience what it is that you do. So I don't know how you can do that in law, but for example, when I have my presentations or my classes, I always start by letting them experience how the brain actually decides. Like it
Hmm.
isn't top down the neocortex and then the subconscious and all those things. It subconsciously drives everything, and I let them experience that, and I show them that, and no matter how much information they have, they cannot go against how the brain actually operates. I prove it. So if you can find a way to demonstrate where they experience it, or at least somehow live through it, have an experience of it, after that, you don't have the resistance anymore. It's not you telling people. It's like, oh, I've lived through it. I know exactly what it means.
Hmm. Hmm.
So in your, and this is from the top of my head, but if you have your practice, if you have some kind of special process that you can take them through that only you do, and you have let them experience that so they can see the results for themselves. If you do that, you will gain their trust on a much deeper level, much, 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 much quicker.
Right, right. And I think the key part of that is that the core of what you're saying is that when you, as the professional, are able to share information that is meaningful to the person in helping them solve their problem, because that's what they're interested in doing, is solving their problem. That's the thing that starts to build your credibility. Now, I was just thinking about how you and I met. We met through LinkedIn. And I can't tell you, and I'm sure you and everybody else, on LinkedIn gets this too, the number of people who will contact you and try to connect. Actually, it's bots that they're using that are doing that. And then, in some cases, I look at it, it's like, well, maybe this person's legitimately trying to connect for something. So I accept the request, and immediately the bot shoots back this pre-canned thing. And I had this one in particular. I'm not going to mention any names or anything, but this one immediately I get this super long, introductory post, and it was all trying to sell me a coaching business, why I need this person to coach me and all. Doesn't know anything about me, never said a word to me. I don't know anything about them, just out of the blue, boom. Obviously, I ignore it because I'm not interested. If I was looking for a coach,
Yeah.
I would look for a coach.
Yeah.
And what happens? I don't know, it was 2 days later. Boom, another automatic, super long thing, all salesy, salesy, salesy. I felt like writing to the person. Is either should I write to them and tell them, hey, look, your approach is way off, or do I just block them because they're annoying me, or do I leave it and just keep getting the stuff so I can use it for content for a discussion like this? So I decided to leave it because it makes great content, which is why I won't mention the person's name because I don't want to put anyone down. But the point is, if your first approach is to come to me and try to sell me, without building your credibility, without me knowing anything about you, without me having any idea that you have the ability to solve my problem, you're not going to be picked. I am not choosing you. I am running from you
Yeah.
to someone else.
Yeah, yeah. Why would you listen to it? I mean, I usually use this example of somebody sitting on the subway on the way home. And then all of a sudden, the person across them it's just a busy subway car, and they're sitting down. All of a sudden, the person across you recommends a certain kind of antibiotics or something. Tells you, and you just what very uncomfortable, and you're just gonna leave the train. But then the next week, you go to the doctor's office because you have a bit of a rash, and it turns out that that guy on the subway train is actually the doctor. But now you went because of the problem. You see him, and you see him in the doc, and now you can trust him. But it doesn't matter how well intended you are. It doesn't matter how skilled you are. It doesn't matter because people don't. They judge from a very gut level feeling first. Safety is the number one thing. If we are not feeling safe or secure about the next, about the outcome of the next step, we're not taking it. We're wired to actually go away from that thing, to withdraw. It's because, I mean, in nature, if we don't do that and we just, wait, what is this? I'm curious about it. If we're not fast enough to withdraw, we got killed. The genes that survived are the ones that were loss averse.
Yeah, and I love the way you put that about the safety because so my background, I'm not going to get into a whole lot of it here, but it's an interesting one in that from a legal perspective, I knew right from the beginning in law school, I enjoyed trial work. I enjoyed being in front of a jury because it was all about persuasion, understanding how people think, what's actually going on in their mind, what are they really looking for next, how do I address that in a respectful way. And that brought me into a mental health career as well, which was an expansion of that understanding of how and why people think and do what they do. And ultimately, we've all probably heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and all these things out there. And I spent a lot of time thinking about that and how to get through to people. And it all came down to one thing. I don't care which theory you look at. I don't care which science you look at. It doesn't matter. It all comes down to the one core thing is comfort. We're always searching comfort. And if this person can make me feel comfortable that they've got my back, they can solve my problem, they can get me where I need to be,
Yeah.
that's who I'm going with. The one where I feel kind of sketchy and they're more focused on how are they going to get paid than they are on telling me anything about what needs to be done. They're not going to get paid, at least not by me, because I'm picking someone else.
Yeah.
So let me do this. We unfortunately have run out of time, which is amazing because this went really, really quickly. So let me ask you for sort of a final word. What would you say is the biggest, most important one thing that someone can take away from this conversation that's going to be the most helpful, meaningful thing for them to do if they're trying to start or build a practice?
So what I would say is I would change my perspective. So if you're trying to sell your service, I would say you gotta change your perspective. You have your own practice now. You are a practitioner when you're in the practice helping clients. However, your 80% of your work now is as a marketer. You have to start thinking not from what you provide, but you have to start looking at who is the person that I'm helping? What is the actual real problem that help them solve? Not that I take them out of bankruptcy. What is the actual problem they're experiencing in their lives? What are the ripple effects that are happening? If you future pace this, could go wrong if they don't solve this? But also future pace what is actually possible, and think about it not in terms of explaining it. Think about it in terms of like, what are the kind of clear visual pictures I can help people see? How can I create a before and an after? So like a story, like a Hollywood story, you have the hero, you have what he the stakes, like what he could lose, what he could gain. It's the exact same thing in marketing. What is it that you stand to lose? What is it that you stand to gain? And what are the stakes? How big is it? And then create a before and after based on not on what you do, but based on what the person you're trying to help. What are they experiencing? What are the emotions they're experiencing? What are the pains they're experiencing? What is the status relocation that's happening because of what's happening? Address all those things. Then what you do just falls into place.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. Well, I hope that the listeners are really taking this to heart, because this is so incredibly important if you're going to be successful in building that practice and marketing yourself. So with that, I've got to close out the show here. This is Be Picked. If you want to learn more about this show or other shows and other things about building your practice, join us at www.bepicked, which is BE-PICKED.com. And we put out regular episodes helping you build your practice. So please feel free to join us. I'm your host, Andrew Colsky, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Be Picked podcast. If you are enjoying this content, please like and subscribe. Thank you.